Welcome back to The Lead. Be prepared, the Boy Scouts motto. But despite their best efforts, nothing could have possibly prepared the Boy Scouts for what happened last night.
I saw him at a cocktail party, and it was very sad because the hottest people in New York were at this party.
That was the President of the United States reminiscing about his salad days in New York City, among other things, all in front of tens of thousands of children and teenagers, in his address, and I use that word loosely, to the annual Boy Scout Jamboree.
I said, who the hell wants to speak about politics when I'm in front of the Boy Scouts, right?
Who the hell wants to speak about politics in front of the Boy Scouts? I think I know someone who does.
But do you remember that incredible night with the maps? And the Republicans are red, and the Democrats are blue, and that map was so red it was unbelievable, and they didn't know what to say.
That's right, breaking with precedent set by Franklin Roosevelt in 1935 and respected until last night, ignoring Scout regulations that, quote, the Boy Scouts of America must not involve scouting in political matters. President Trump ran right for partisan politics last night. He trashed Obamacare. He assailed the nation's capital.
We ought to change it from the word swamp to the word cesspool, or perhaps to the word sewer.
He attacked the free press.
Fake media, fake news.
He went after Hillary Clinton.
My opponent didn't work hard there because she was told
He also told the children this long story about a tycoon that included this curious section.
he went out and bought a big yacht, and he had a very interesting life. I won't go any more than that because you're Boy Scouts, so I'm not going to tell you what he did. Should I tell you? Should I tell you?
The president thanked the audience of 12 to 18-year-olds for voting for him. The Scout oath, incidentally, is that, quote, on my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and to my country and to obey the Scout law, to help other people at all times, to keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight. Let's bring in the panel now. CNN political commentators Andre Bauer, Mary Catherine Ham, and Angela Rye. I'm going to start with you, Angela Rye, just because I think you'll enjoy it the most. What were your impressions of the speech last night?
You know, I think Donald Trump gives us all a front row seat as to why it's so important to teach civics in school. I think he missed all the classes, and unfortunately for the Boy Scouts, they didn't learn anything from the Commander-in-Chief. So.
It's just interesting. You go back and you look at the speeches given by previous presidents, George W. Bush, I was writing one. I mean, they're appropriate speeches to 13, 14-year-old boys about serving your country, serving causes greater than yourself.
Right. Just give a nice commencement-like speech, stick to the oath and the law. I'm a proud sister of 2 Eagle Scouts, barely made it under 18, but they did make it. And look, it's not hard. Go out there and give a nice speech to the young people and move on. But that is not what we were doing.
Andre, your thoughts?
These young people get to see that you don't have to be a career politician to be president of the United States. You don't have to be the most polished person. He talked about loyalty and trustworthiness. He talked about do what you love, work hard, never give up. He gave an inspirational speech. Look, the left has been trying to destroy the Boy Scouts for years. I can't believe they're concerned about them now. They want to bring girls into Boy Scouts. I mean, it's the craziest thing ever heard.
Andre.
Look, this guy is the commander-in-chief of the world. The last president didn't come once in 8 years. And so now we're condemning this guy because he said something that doesn't fit with the political mold that we put up with for so long. It was probably refreshing to these guys.
No, Andre, you know, the only thing I would say to you is there's still something called just human decency. And regardless of your political leanings, regardless of what party you vote, and again, these are not voting people. To Jake's point in his rundown of this particular speech, this was inappropriate. And I think that the first rule in public speaking is to know your audience. And I think either he's delusional or he just doesn't care. But this was not an appropriate speech. And normally, you know, I just said, oh, Andre, because normally I can trust you to come through with, you know, one good polished moment. And I think you have to be honest here and saying this is not okay.
Andre, would you give that speech? What would you do if you were asked to address a bunch of Boy Scouts? You're a former lieutenant governor of South Carolina.
Well, I've addressed a group of Boy Scouts, not the big group, but I've addressed them in South Carolina, and I gave them somewhat of a non-normal speech as well. Probably not as what Donald Trump did, but I gave them something they weren't used to having. Look, they've heard these political speeches before. Lots of politicians come and visit the Boy Scouts. Number one, he pointed out people in his own administration who had achieved great success, that they too had been Boy Scouts. So it gave them something to relate to, that people had been through the same process that they'd been through, had achieved great success. And I think that gives these Boy Scouts, I think if you go back and ask them several years from now, were they excited and do they remember the President of the United States speaking to them? Absolutely. Was he motivational? Yes, absolutely. And I think that's what you take away from this. Look, we can criticize anybody. He made the effort as President of the United States to accept the invitation to go talk to these young people, and I guarantee you they're better off because of it.
Well, but it's definitely memorable. But let me turn to an interesting segue that I can make here, which is he did bring some members of the cabinet who are former Eagle Scouts. Ryan Zinke, the Secretary of Interior, also a former Navy SEAL, but he was going full scout with his outfit last night, although I don't think it was regulation. An Eagle Scout in his administration that was not invited last night is Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who was alluded to, I think, in the section where President Trump talked about loyalty, how they need more loyalty. What is going on with this drama? And I mean, obviously the president wants the Russia investigation to end, but why is he not just firing him?
Well, let me briefly say to Andre's point that, like, it is something to watch a bunch of people have vapors over the institution of the Boy Scouts who, like, 5 minutes ago thought it was just a homophobic travesty of an organization. So I think there is a point there, but it doesn't make the speech great. On the Sessions part, this is something that continues to bother me about Trump. Whether you like the person who is in the administration, whether it's Comey or with Sessions, I think these folks deserve a face-to-face conversation and somebody being straight with them about whether they're supposed to be in that administration or not, and we have not seen that happen. If he wants to fire the guy, he can fire the guy. But this sort of standoff is going to become extremely awkward as we move forward.
And to say it's going to become extremely awkward, I think it already is. Like, we just watched this press conference where you see, you know, the Donald Trump who was the bully on the campaign trail, like, come back, like, fully committed to making this man feel very uncomfortable in this role. I thought it would be impossible for me to ever feel bad for Jeff Sessions. I almost feel bad for Jeff Sessions.
Not quite, but he does.
Not just yet.
Not yet,
but
okay.
Almost, because you're watching this play out. This is someone who has dedicated his life to public service. Whether I think it's good service or not is not to be debated, but it really is something to watch. And he talks about loyalty and wanting someone to in some way pledge allegiance to him in some way, and he's not loyal at all. He's willing to throw the baby, the bathwater, and the tub out the window.
Andre, why not just fire him? Obviously, the president's made his position very clear. He wishes that Jeff Sessions were not the Attorney General. Why not just fire him?
This is somewhere where I actually differ with the president. I'm a big loyalty person too, but Jeff Sessions is a class act. He is a good man who has given a lot of years of his life to this country, and I wish they'd really do this behind closed doors. I wish that this is one area where I would actually ask the president to handle it differently. I'm not the president, but I admire what Jeff Sessions has done. I understand why he's disappointed and disagrees with him, but I wish they'd do it in the Oval Office and not out on Twitter.
Well, and here's the other thing, like, who's left of the RNC faction now? Is it just Reince hanging on? Chris Christie never got a slot. Jeff Sessions was one of the early endorsers from the GOP part of this group, and that group is not hanging together, but there are plenty of Trump supporters who do like some of the things Sessions has been working on in the DOJ, and that'll be an interesting dynamic. Of course, he still has the power to fire him if he wants.
He does have the power to fire them. How much do you think this is just a prelude to getting Mueller fired?
That, I think, is definitely on the table. We know already that he's asking for Jeff Sessions to limit the investigation, which of course he can't do. I think that Donald Trump, again, going back to just basic civics, doesn't understand that the Department of Justice reports to the American people. They have an obligation to Congress. That's responsible for the oversight of the department, not to the president. Of course he can pick his cabinet, but that's it. So I think it's a huge issue that's on the table, and it continues to make him look very compromised. All of his team is lawyered up, including him on the Russia investigation, and as of late, it's Ivanka as well. They all have lawyers.
Andre, quickly, if you can, do you think that this could cost President Trump's support among the people who like Jeff Sessions, whatever you would call them, nationalists, people who want strong, hardline immigration policies? Could they actually side with Sessions over President Trump politically?
They could. I don't see them going anywhere, though. They don't have anywhere up there. They're not going to go to the other side The other side's not coming to the middle. They're not trying to work with anybody, and so it seems like they get further and further away. So the moderates among Republicans and Democrats, you don't see that anymore. When I was in the legislature, you had a close line, and so both parties worked together and got a lot done. You're not seeing that at all in Washington. So whether they stick with Sessions, I don't think they have anywhere else they can leave to against Trump. So I think they're going to still work with the administration.
All right, great panel. Mary Catherine Ham, Angela Rye, and Andre Bauer. Thanks one and all for being here.